All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are wading into one of the biggest, most important debates happening anywhere right now: artificial general intelligence, or AGI. You've got tech leaders on one side promising a full-on utopia, and on the other, you have scientists pointing to a massive roadblock right inside our own skulls. This is the great debate. So let's start with the dream, the big vision. You have people like Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, saying things like this. And what he's getting at is that we're not just building a slightly better search engine here. The argument is that AI is a totally different kind of technology, one that could literally rewrite the future for humanity. And this whole vision, it's built on this one massive idea: the superintelligence revolution. The promise isn't just about making our lives a little easier. It's about creating a future that is so fundamentally different, we can barely even wrap our heads around it today. It's a complete shift in how we discover, how we create, and how we solve problems. And you know, it's not just Amodei. You've got Mark Zuckerberg at Meta, Sam Altman at OpenAI. A lot of the biggest names in tech are all in on this. They're not just building cool new apps. They believe they're building an intelligence that can put scientific discovery on hyperdrive and innovate way beyond what any human is capable of. We're talking about tackling the biggest challenges that have defined our entire history. So, okay, what does that actually look like? How does this superintelligence work in practice? Well, the phrase that really captures the sheer scale of this whole thing is something Amodei calls a country of geniuses. I mean, just try to picture this for a second. Millions of AI minds, and each one is smarter than our most brilliant Nobel Prize winners. And they're all collaborating, all working together at nearly the speed of light. They could read and process information hundreds of times faster than we can. This is the engine that the true believers think is going to drive the revolution. And if they're right, the results are, they're biblical. We're talking about taking 100 years of medical and scientific progress and cramming it into less than a decade. The end of cancer, doubling how long we live, curing diseases we've always thought were incurable, solving world hunger, fixing climate change. It's basically a vision of a world without all the things that have plagued us forever. It's an incredible, breathtaking vision, right? But here's the thing. It all hangs on one gigantic assumption: that if we just keep making our language models bigger and bigger, we'll eventually create genuine thinking intelligence. And that brings us to the absolute heart of this whole debate. Are we actually building real thinkers, or are we just getting unbelievably good at building fancy talkers? And this is where we hit the big counter-argument, a huge scientific roadblock that kind of challenges the entire foundation of this AI boom. And it's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. Language just isn't the same thing as thought. This quote from Benjamin Riley just nails it. Today's AIs, these large language models, they are built on one thing and one thing only: words. They are masters at finding patterns in language and predicting what the next word should be. Their entire universe is language. So you have to ask the critical question: what if language isn't where intelligence comes from in the first place? And this is where the actual science gets so fascinating, because decades of research in neuroscience all seem to point to the same conclusion. Our ability to think, to reason, to get new ideas, to solve problems, that's a totally separate process from our ability to talk about it. We use language to share our thoughts, sure, but language doesn't create the thoughts themselves. And you see evidence for this everywhere you look. Just think about a baby. They're running experiments, they're analyzing data, they're figuring out how the world works long before they can say a single word. Or an even more powerful example: people who get a condition called aphasia and lose their ability to use language. Their ability to think is often perfectly fine. They can still do math, they can use logic, they understand what other people are thinking. And the craziest part? We can actually see this difference inside the human brain. Thanks to fMRI scans, neuroscientists have basically mapped it all out, and it's like a tale of two completely different networks. So first up, here are the parts of your brain that fire up when you're processing language. Listening to someone talk, reading a book, speaking. This is your language network. Okay, now look at this. This is a completely different network. This is what activates when you're solving a hard problem, thinking about what someone else is planning, or just using basic logic. This is your thinking network. And there it is. That's the core finding. Plain and simple. The parts of our brain that handle language and the parts that handle general-purpose thinking are different, distinct systems. They are separate. Thought is not just a side effect of language. So what in the world does this all mean for AI? If these language models are only modeling language and not the separate system of thought, then what are we actually building? And that brings us to this really cool idea called the dead metaphor machine. This chart really lays out the difference perfectly. On one side, you have true intelligence, the kind that gives us scientific breakthroughs. It creates totally new ways of looking at the world. It reasons from scratch. It gets bored with what we already know. On the other side, you have large language models. And what they are absolutely brilliant at is remixing everything we've already created, matching patterns, and just predicting what comes next based on all that old data. So that's what a dead metaphor machine is. It's an AI that can be a perfect library of everything humanity has ever known, an incredible tool for summarizing, for recombining what's already out there. But, and this is the key, it's fundamentally trapped by that existing knowledge. It can't have a truly new, original idea. The philosopher Richard Rorty had this great line. He said, "Common sense is a collection of dead metaphors." What he meant is that common sense is just a bunch of ideas that were once radical and new, but we've used them so much they've become normal, baked-in assumptions. While an AI trained on all our data is basically a machine of perfect common sense. It's a master of all our dead metaphors, but it might not have what it takes to create the next living one. So, as we keep racing towards this idea of superintelligence, that's the fundamental question we're left with. Are we about to give birth to a new kind of mind, a true thinking machine that will solve all our problems? Or are we just building the world's most sophisticated, most perfect mirror, one that simply reflects our own intelligence back at us with breathtaking, dazzling clarity? That's the great debate.